stories. My late husband and I met in 1990 at the laboratory we both worked for. Neither of us believed in the paranormal, and in fact, we were both atheists. I still am. However, I now believe that our consciousness continues after bodily death. Here's what changed my mind. In 1995, my late husband and I moved into our home in Seattle. The house was built in 1926 and had not been renovated at all, other than the appliances. A few years after we moved in, I decided we should put an exercise room in the huge basement, as our home was too small to put equipment anywhere else. Around that time, I started to notice that things would go missing, and then we would find those things in a very weird place. For example, my husband was cooking and I was in the tub. He came in and asked if I had taken the measuring cup. I had gotten into the bath before he started cooking and had not budged. He said he had it right next to him. He turned away to do something, but then when he looked back, it was gone. I got out of the tub, put my robe on, and went into the living room. My eye caught the sight of the fireplace mantel's glass cabinet door, which was ajar. The measuring cup was on the top shelf in the cabinet. I thought my husband was playing some prank on me, but he swore he did not do it. Keys and small items also started to go missing, then turn up right where I left them, and sometimes in places that made no sense at all. And then there was the toilet paper. We had several cats, one of whom liked to pee in the bath mat, so we religiously kept the door shut. It was a habit, and neither of us ever left it open. It was muscle memory for both of us. But starting around the time we began renovating, every few weeks, sometimes months, I would open the door to the bathroom to find that the toilet paper had been unrolled in a chevron pattern all the way across the floor. Even if it was somehow unrolled on its own, there was no way it would be in a pattern all across the bathroom. It was then that we began to suspect someone was living with us. I made a reservation at La Posada in Santa Fe. We would go there for a long weekend. It was purportedly haunted, and I wanted to see if anything similar would happen somewhere else. Now this part still blows me away. One day, I came home early from work and flipped on the TV. An episode of Unsolved Mysteries was on, and the hotel I was going to was being featured. The show was at least 10 years old, and it was on a channel I rarely watched. It was about the ghost of La Posada. I was shocked at the coincidence. I was going there that weekend. Right then, my friend calls me and says he just turned on his TV and it was on Unsolved Mysteries and was showing my hotel room. He had also come home early and did not watch this channel. We were both dumbfounded at the coincidence. When we went on the trip, all was quiet the first night, and I was fine with it, though maybe a little disappointed. We were staying in Julie's room in the main house. The property is quite spread out, and most of the guest rooms are individual casadas built all over the property. My mom and stepdad had met us there, but they were staying in one of the casadas about 10 minutes away. The main building where we were staying had a restaurant, bar, and a game room on the first level. Guest rooms were on the second and third levels. The hotel had been a grand home built in the 1800s by a wealthy merchant named Joseph Stab. Sadly, his wife, Julia, was mentally ill and really went downhill after the death of one of her children, so she was kept in her room, as it was common to do back then, so the children wouldn't be stigmatized. Her spirit is apparently quite active. On our second night, we were all playing board games and smoking cigars in the game room after dinner. This was directly below Julia's room. A waitress walked by my dad and spilled a drink on him, so my husband said he would go get one of his own shirts for him to change into, since my stepdad's casata was a good distance away. My husband left, but then came back less than a minute later. He was very excited and told us he had come to see the room. I grabbed a staff member to come with us just in case. When we walked in, I knew why he was so excited. The room was just reeking of rose perfume. I mean, it was so strong I had to step out to catch my breath. I asked the staff member if anyone had gone into our room. She said no, they were not allowed to do that unless it was housekeeping, but this was 9 at night. She then told us Julia gets upset when people smoke cigars, and this happens when she smells the smoke. We had been taping the room just in case there was any activity, but we saw nothing. Nobody else had entered the room since we had gone downstairs for dinner. When my husband and I returned from our trip, activity in our home ramped up dramatically. Most notably, the unraveled toilet paper prank happened more often. Now, I know what you may be thinking, that my husband was doing this, and I considered that, but it would have been very difficult to pull off, and he was out of town a lot, and activity happened even then. I should note that we had one bathroom on the first floor. Our bathroom was on the second floor next to my office. One night, we went out to dinner with some friends on a Sunday evening. We got home at about 10 p.m. We were both pretty tired, so we decided to go straight to bed, as it was a school night. I went into the bathroom to brush my teeth and get ready for bed. Nothing was amiss. He got ready for bed too, so we turned off the lights downstairs and went upstairs. I ran to the bed and jumped in over the footboard. At the exact moment I landed, the TV turned on. It was on some obscure channel that we had not been watching. Not only was it on a different channel, but it was playing an old scary movie I remembered watching as a kid called Don't Look Now. I could not believe it was playing. I hadn't seen it in many years, but my husband didn't care about the movie. He wanted to know how I turned the TV on. I said I must have landed on the remote and started looking around myself for it. Then he told me not to bother. He pointed to his nightstand, and there it was, a good 15 feet away from him and about 6 feet from me. I knew he did not turn it on because our TV was a piece of shit, and the on and off button, if it was on the box, was well hidden enough that I had never laid eyes on it. There was a plastic flap cover at the base of it, and I found out later that you had to reach in underneath it to get to the on and off button. Weird, I know, but that's how it was built. I just used the remote and never really thought about it. I asked my husband how he turned it on without the remote, but he insisted he did not do it, and because he did not have the remote, and nowhere near the TV, I believed in him. He was visibly shaken. It still had not sunk in for me. He did not turn it on, and I did not turn it on. It was on a different channel. I could only summarize it must have been some electronic malfunction, and I blew it off. He did not. I grabbed the remote and studied it for a few minutes, trying to find out if a stuck button or some logical explanation, but it looked fine, and I used it to turn off the TV. My husband had terrible PTSD from his days in the army, and he said that someone must have been in the house. He decided to do a full sweep and started to head downstairs. Not being a total moron, I told him I would come with him. When we walked into the kitchen, we were shocked. All the lights were on, and all the cabinets were open. He was starting to get really freaked out, and so was I. I now agreed that someone must be in our house, but remembering the toilet paper incidents, my mind started to think that maybe it was something else. We left the kitchen and went into the living room. The light was on in there too, and the chandelier was swinging wildly. I had never seen anything like it. I went over to it and reached up to stop it from moving. As I reached up, I felt a buzzing sensation in my body, kind of like static electricity. That could have been my nerves, but to this day, it remains the strangest sensation I have ever had. We decided to continue through the house, and he said he was going to check out the basement. We walked down the hall to the basement door, and I told him to hang on because we had walked past the closed bathroom door, and I wanted to see if someone was in there. I cracked open the door, turned on the light, and saw that the toilet paper was once again unrolled in a chevron pattern across the floor. I quickly shut the door. My husband opened the basement door and started to go down the stairs when he let out a yelp, then quickly did an about face and came right back up again. He was pale and shaken and said something cold had just gone through his body. He was really upset, and I had never seen him so frightened. We only had one more room to go, so I told him I'd go in by myself. It was our guest bedroom, and it was just a few feet down from the basement door. I reached over to turn the knob, and all the door hardware fell out. I was left holding a doorknob staring at the floor where everything else had fallen. I did not know why, but that was probably the most jolting part of it all for me. How could all the hardware have been loosened just enough to fall when the knob was turned? Someone had to be able to manipulate it just enough to stay on, but also enough that it would fall when the knob was twisted. When the door opened, nothing in the room itself looked off, so we decided to go back to our bedroom to try to calm down and get some sleep. He was behind me as we went back upstairs, and when we walked back into the bedroom, the TV was on again. I know I turned it off, and I know he had not been in the room since we left it. He had been in my line of vision the entire time. Whatever had done all of that stuff downstairs had been in our room again. I went to the bed to get the remote, but I could not find it anywhere. I scoured the room, looked in drawers, under the bed, pulled the covers off, but found nothing. My husband thought I might have taken it downstairs, so we reluctantly decided to go back down to look for it. I guess we could have just unplugged the TV, but I wanted to know where that remote was. He walked out of the room, and as I was following him, I caught sight of something shining in the cat litter box. It was a covered box, but the light was hitting something metallic. So I went over and took the cover off. Yes, my TV remote was buried in the used litter box. After everything else that happened that night, this put me over the top. Someone was clearly having fun scaring us. And they were there right now, and I could not see them. It was less of a fear of ghosts than it was a fear that came about from knowing that I was visible to someone who was not visible. That was it for the night, though, and we went back to bed without further incident. Not that I slept a whole lot. Another time, I remember going to my office, also upstairs, and getting this feeling like someone was with me in the room. My husband was on yet another business trip, so I was sure there were no other humans in the house. The house was very quiet, and I just had this strange feeling. On a lurk, I said, "If you are able to hear and understand me, please go do the toilet paper thing. I'll give you a few minutes before I go downstairs to check. That will let me know if you are real or if my husband is pranking me." After 5 minutes or so, I went down to check, and you probably know what happened. I opened the door, and the toilet paper was laid out in a chevron pattern across the floor again. So, now I was alone with an invisible person, and I knew that whoever this was could understand me and communicate with me. I still have no idea if he or she was there all the time or just popped up for some mayhem once in a while. It's not like something happened every day or even every week. But enough happened at that house to change my entire worldview. I had a housekeeper come every week, and one time I was outside gardening when she came over. My husband was out of town. About an hour went by, and she ran outside looking panicked. She asked if I had been inside, and I told her I had not. When I asked why she wanted to know, she said that she and her sister had been upstairs cleaning the bedroom when they heard the utensil drawer in the kitchen open and slam shut over and over. She thought that someone had broken in because I am a very chill person, and she did not think it was me. I then decided to tell her. When I did, she just said, "Oh, that makes sense now." We had wondered if that was what was going on. Apparently my ghost liked to play pranks on her too, but she was accepting of it, and said that in Mexico it wasn't a big deal like it is here in the United States. She still works for me 20 years later. So, ever since I was little, I'd probably say around 5 or 6, I always used to experience sleep paralysis in my old house. I describe my experience as somewhat normal, but one thing always used to happen that I have never heard of. Obviously, the typical dark figure at the end of my bed and a having feeling on my chest was there, but I would always feel as though someone was punching my back really aggressively, and would get the image of what I describe as a bear. This would happen almost every night until I was 11, and I just assumed this was normal. The night of my grandmother's funeral, when I was like 9 or 10, I saw her stand near my window smiling at me. I remember trying to talk to her, asking why she was there, because she was meant to be dead, obviously not understanding that if what I was seeing was real, she would be a ghost. I got out of my bed and went to walk to her, and her face dropped, Her eyes were wide, and she looked terrified. Out of nowhere, her face lost the appearance of skin and turned into basically just the skull and screamed, "Get out!" Looking back now, I don't believe that was my great-grandma's spirit. I believe it is the man I'm going to tell you about. Around 6 months ago, my mom, my brother, and I were talking before we went to bed about ghosts and the paranormal, as we had just finished re-watching Paranormal Activity. I told her about having sleep paralysis in my bedroom every night, and I remember her just saying, "You were joking, right?" And I was like, "No, why would I be joking?" She then went to tell me about how when we were moving out of the house in 2014 and we were packing our belongings, she went into the crawl space in her attic bedroom and found these old newspapers and ownership records from a man who owned the house in the 1900s who died. We don't know if he died at home or rather he died elsewhere, but we believe that his spirit is what I was experiencing. The reason we came to this conclusion was because my mom's bedroom wasn't a bedroom at the time. Her friend, who she bought the house from, had just converted it, and mine and my brother's bedroom was one big room. I believe he was angry that we were there because he still saw it as his house, although I could be wrong. Anyway, after we moved into our current house in 2014, I didn't experience anything for a good few years. Jump forward to 2017, my best friend at the time was over, and we were baking for a cake sale we were doing for school. She had gone to the toilet, but when she came back to the kitchen, she told me she had seen an old man at the bottom of my stairs and described him. He had a blue checked button-up shirt, tucked in formal black trousers. He was bald, wore rectangular framed glasses, and had a sort of round belly. I just assumed she was trying to freak me out, as I had recently told her about my sleep paralysis in the old house. A few months later, another close friend of mine was at my house. It's important to note that my best friend had not ever met this other friend of mine, and again, she had gone to the toilet and said she saw a man at the bottom of the stairs. I wish I was joking when I say she described him the exact same. The summer of the same year, 2017, my best friend of 11 years at the time, now 14 years, who actually moved into my old house, traveled 2 hours to stay at my house for a whole week. One night, she shook me awake saying, "Stop, you're freaking me out." When I was awake, I was very confused, asking what she meant. She told me that I was saying, "No, you are not supposed to be here. I left like you wanted." This could be a coincidence because she was there and it reminded me of my old house, but I just think it's a bit too weird when my other friends said they saw the same man in my house a month or so prior. Jump forward to 2019 and present day, and I have had some unexplainable experiences that could be put down to coincidence, but I thought I'd add them here. First of all, I used to have this desk chair in my room that my cat loves to sleep on, like she literally claimed that spot as her own. And one day, the cat on the opposite end of my room had just hissed and hissed at the chair. Me being like, "There's nothing there, don't worry," I picked her up and tried to put her on the chair and settle her down a bit, but she literally clung to my shoulder and wouldn't stop meowing. until I put her down and opened the door for her. A couple of months later, I experienced what I think was sleep paralysis again. I was face down in my pillow and couldn't move when I woke up and felt like I was actually going to die. I literally could not breathe. It freaked me out so much that I make it a point to lay down on my side rather than my stomach. The last thing that comes to mind was literally last week. My brother was at work and he left his bedroom door open. I don't like my cat going in there as he gets himself stuck under his bed, so I shut his door. And when I went downstairs and sat in the living room with my mom for a good half hour, when I came back upstairs, his door was wide open, but it kept swinging back and forth. Jokingly, I said, "Ha ha, very funny, Jeremy. Please shut the door." And, I kid you not, the door slammed shut. In June of 2019, me and a friend had decided with our girlfriends that we were going to go camping. It's the day of, and we are packing our shit in the car. We finally get all of our stuff loaded and get in the car and put the address in the GPS. We set off on the trip, and after 3 hours of driving and 45 minutes of hearing my friend and his girl argue, we finally arrive. We get out of the car, and me and my friend begin unloading. After getting my stuff, I begin getting my girlfriend's stuff. As I was, and my friend was asking his girlfriend why she needed 3 bags for a one-night camping trip, she smiled and opened one of them, and it had an ounce of weed, pre-rolls, and other goodies. The other 2 bags had her favorite snacks and clothes. Now knowing we had weed, we had to find a place to camp that wasn't near other people. It took until sundown, but we found a perfect spot. We decided that after we got everything taken care of, we would eat hot dogs and smoke a blunt. We started to build a campfire to light the area so we could set up our tents, but ran out of wood in the immediate area. I said I would go get some. While my friend stayed with the girls, I set off on my journey, and after about 2 minutes, I find some sticks to use. I start picking up sticks, and all of a sudden, I felt someone grab my wrist. I looked up to see a man with a blank expression. For a man, he had surprisingly long fingernails. He was digging them in my wrist while trying to grab my other wrist. I turned my head to not see his face and screamed for help, and my friends shouted a response saying they were coming. After they shouted, I immediately felt relief in my wrist. I wasn't struggling to keep my arms down, so I turned and the man wasn't there anymore. I turned and ran as fast as I could, terrified. I met my friends and said we had to leave immediately. I didn't even explain myself. I just wanted to go. We load our stuff up and take the long walk back. We get to the car and load our bags into it. I explained what happened as we were walking back, and it scared them enough to make them want to hustle. I had a picture of my wrist immediately after, but my iPhone broke and my iCloud wasn't backed up, so I lost the picture. I do have a picture of it now, though. It has since then become a scar, which shows just how much force he put onto it. It was absolutely terrifying. If you're new, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, as it really helps me out. And if you are already subscribed, welcome back and thank you for subscribing.